I'd like to welcome to the stage Marcel and Sam and Robin, if we can, and I'll introduce them as they're coming up. Marcel, I'm sure, is well known to most of you. He is arguably one of our most experienced and venerable startup investors and growth directors for the innovation sector, also executive director at the moment of NZGCP, sorting things out there. Robin is a connector, and she and I have known each other for a long time also through aviation, but she is, in her current role, is really a connector around the digital side of and cybersecurity. So she'll be talking a little bit around that. And Sam is back home from New York. He has both traversed, he's fascinating in a lot of respects. He's traversed both engineering but also product development. He's a startup founder himself, and also most recently has been doing his master's in law at Harvard, looking at the impact of tax policy on attracting and retaining talent, and has been quite seminal in recent months around what, for those of us who have become heavily engaged in tax policy, around the foreign investment fund impact on retaining and attracting talent into the New Zealand ecosystem. Now, I know we're pressed for time, and I really want these wonderful people to be talking rather than myself. So what I would like each of them to do, starting with myself, just to give us a couple of minutes on their reflections on both accelerating the New Zealand innovation system, but also what we've been hearing this morning. So Marcel.
Thank you, Anna. Kia ora tātou. I'm using the hard copy to help the memory. I'm getting a bit older and I'm not up to the digital device. You're a master of that, Robin. Rosalie mentioned that one of the summit themes is gritty optimism, so it is optimism, Sir Peter, not pessimism. And it actually describes me quite well, because I've been the last person standing in a number of ventures as an angel investor and a growth company director, but also a big part of celebrating milestones and exits, which have rewarded large numbers of peoples. I'm going to touch on three aspects and sort of illustrate them in the context of the guidance received from Anna. Where we got some strengths that we could double down on, where are some of the opportunities that I certainly have seen over the last 25 odd years. I'd like to start with the first one, just purely innovation. And to me, innovation is taking an idea to impact, figuring out how to turn something that could be a gem in the garage or in the lab into something that's really of value to the community, to a particular market. And frankly, the impact can be economic, social, environmental, or cultural. It's not just about financial returns. In fact, I've never invested for financial returns. It's always about creating value, and if you create value, you'll get customers to pay for your service, and the founders and the investors get rewarded. But it's the satisfaction of making a difference, that's really driving you in the first place. Through Sprout Agritech, what I see as a great strength and what gives me huge confidence in the future is that the vast majority of the founders, I'd say probably all of the founders and the startups, have some purpose, meaningful purpose, people and planet. And they can be applying themselves in lots of different ways, but generally leverage the lab of Aotearoa environment where we can experiment and prove out innovation that we could then scale to the world. What I'd like to see is more of that. I don't know, how many ideas it takes thousands of ideas to create a unicorn or a $1 billion business. Probably some in this room would probably say it only takes one idea. So if you put your hand up if you can pick winners. Hello. So it takes thousands of ideas, to ultimately deliver outcomes of meaning. But I would like to see our lab, Aotearoa, leveraged more powerfully, and a greater commitment to transforming our agri-food sector to more sustainable, higher value. Doubling exports on the current business as usual is simply a race to the bottom. So that's a massive opportunity for New Zealand. A second aspect that inspires me is execution. You founders out there will know that execution is the Achilles heel of many startups. Having that clarity of purpose, that vision, the values, aligned values, and that includes investors, founders, and partners, is key to success. But I fear, and certainly Sir Peter emphasised the fact that execution is also the Achilles heel of building a startup ecosystem, where we're really not set up for the long game. There's not that consistency. You've got to be able to stay with it for an extended period of time. Got to lock in the gains. And if I think about competitive advantage, Te Ao Māori to me is a significant competitive advantage for Aotearoa. And you've seen that undermined, recently by, I'd call it ideological grandstanding. And this might look, fairly minor to some people. But to be successful in innovation, it requires a full court press across capability, connections, capital, and culture. And any setback can be quite material, particularly when you don't have a lot of other attributes in your favour. A notable strength in New Zealand is our ability to achieve a lot for very little. It may surprise you. Sometimes it involves number 8 fencing wire. I was involved in a company, Green Button, that was acquired by Microsoft some years ago, and I remember pitching in Silicon Valley, and it was to Sierra, Tim Gallieri, and he said, look, how much money has gone into this business? And we said 1.5 million. And he said, look, it's going to be a short meeting because there's no way you could have achieved all that with that amount of money. So frugality is certainly an attribute. On the other hand, the downside of this, and this is our opportunity, is that we're seriously undercapitalised. But virtually every venture, there are notable exceptions. There are gold medalists in the Olympics as well, who will rise above anything. But we're undercapitalised, let's say to the tune of about $5 billion, to be able to take those ideas to impact, certainly in terms of what I've seen. And it's not just financial capital, but also human capital. Smart capital is what we want, and there's probably quite a bit of it in the room here. And the final comment is connection. The Startup Genome Report makes it clear that that's the primary driver of startup ecosystem success: connection, connectivity. People do business with people. He tangata. What is the most important? And I really want to emphasise that is fundamental. Get out there, get on a plane, make those connections. We're very good at it as Kiwis. We're not that good at what Startup Genome calls collisions. When you connect with someone, ask for something or offer something. Ask for a deal or ask for an introduction, whatever it might be. So we need to become a lot more confident and demanding when it comes to asking for something from the people we meet. And just finally, one of the things that I think is unique about New Zealand and what is quite different from many countries around the world is a relatively easy path to government. The government, the regulators, are quite approachable. And I've heard and I've seen that they're going to say yes a lot more often. Yes, we are open for business. And I think that's probably one of the most meaningful things the government can do is regulatory settings to stimulate and catalyse innovation. We've seen in the aerospace, you've been part of that. Electricity, that's happening. There's a common theme here, Anna. But, and we're seeing it in the genetic space, biotech, and what have you. So setting settings that, accelerate innovation and that path to impact.
Kia ora koutou katoa, anei rā te mihi kia koutou. He uri ahau no te rarawa, and I know there's a few more te rarawa in the room today. Ka pai, kia ora whananga. Two takeaways, reflections from this morning. I loved both of those kōrero, thank you. One of them is we should be thinking about crisis management when it comes to our economy, to our businesses, and certainly in the networks that I have, Māori companies, we are in crisis management. We have a really representative group, I guess, in the tech sector and weightless economies. The likes of Callaghan, NZT and other agencies have a terribly low threshold in their portfolios of Māori companies. And the reasons aren't just the Māori companies. So the first thing, takeaway, is let's think of it as crisis management and stop fluffing around the edges and hope that the world will do the right things, because they won't. So we have to manage ourselves. And I took that away, particularly from the first speaker this morning, Kiribati, and ka nui te aroha ki a rātou. The second takeaway is around a bit of work that I've been doing in the last couple of years around the government and its investment portfolios. This particular government is only an exaggeration, perhaps, of the last, and we're seeing a pattern, I guess, over many years. Changes of administration don't change it too much. I want to see them put skin in the game. I am getting a little bit tired, I guess, of them telling companies they have to put their skin in the game. I assure you they are. So any company owners sitting here, you know what I mean. You're putting skin in the game. We need to see that from our government too. So I'm hoping with the refresh that we're seeing coming up, that we see something that looks like that. So those are my two takeaways. Anna, just I thought I'd share some snippets of information from some reports that I've done over the last couple of years on the Māori-owned tech sector companies. These are individual Māori-owned, and there's a few of them in the room here today who are Māori-owned tech companies, and also the collectively owned tech companies. So these are Māori or iwi-owned tech companies, and what that looks like. So every response that I might give to Anna's question will be from this foundational bit of information that I share with you now. So the report was called Toi Hangarau. And you can find it online, the last one, 2024, at toihangaro.nz. There were 85 Māori-owned tech companies involved. They collectively employ 1,300 people, FTEs. 79% of them are in the two smallest business categories, that is small and micro businesses. 5% were large businesses. 7% of those 85 are global, meaning they have a presence overseas, some physical presence. Prominently Australia and the US. There's a modest shift towards global markets that we're seeing for the 2 years that the report has run. Of the 178 directors of those 85 companies, 26% were female and 22% were both Māori and female. So that gives you a little bit of a view of what that sector looks like. We also had a closer look at what we called the heavyweights. So these are companies who are earning between 5 million and just over 40 million revenue a year. Of those 12, sorry, I was just about to repeat myself. Of those 12, there were 9 the year before. So in 2023, there were 9 of these companies. 2024, there were 12 of these companies. Of those, 6 of them, 50%, are individually owned companies. The other 50% are either iwi or Māori-owned collective companies. That was up from 2 the year before. So what are we seeing here? Are we seeing an emergence of collectively owned companies? We are seeing that, and I think, Peter, you talked about this a little bit, Māori companies often would focus on the primary sectors, so the 4 Fs, forest, farms, fisheries, and foreigners/tourists. We're now seeing a shift for some collective-owned iwi or Māori companies, organisations moving towards the tech economy. So I thought I would just leave that there for the moment. Does anyone want to know which iwi was coming up tops for the most entrepreneurs in the tech space? Ngāti Raukawa. That's me, kia ora.
Kia ora, everyone. My kind of focus for Aotearoa New Zealand is human capital, people, he tangata. I think that we just need more builders, doers on the ground, building taking risks. We're great at talking about things and analysing things. I was impressed with the materials that came out of the Productivity Commission over the last 10 years. So what? We need people on the ground actually building. And I think one answer to that is education. The problem with education is that that has a long return on investment. I think that today, starting with early childhood education all the way through tertiary education, we need more of a focus on critical thinking. So back to Sir Peter's evidence-based material. We need more systems thinking. I saw that on Sir Peter's slides as well. And we need more empathy in education curriculum through all education. But my 4-year-old daughter will be entering the workforce in 15, 20 years. That's a long time if we invest today to see those returns. So what can we be doing in the meantime? There's a lot we can be doing. I personally think there are a ton of Kiwi expats overseas that are potentially the lowest hanging fruit. All of their success, they already have a connection to their whenua here. And a lot of them want to bring that home, and there are barriers preventing them from doing that. And so I think part of what we need to be doing is more people on the ground, building, creating, and kind of to Marcel, the 1,000 ideas. If people in the kind of the venture capital ecosystem, the power law, the more we have building, the more people and the more companies will succeed. The more failures, the better. Learn from those failures, repeat, and keep building. So that's kind of my focus.
Fantastic, thanks, Sam. Marcel, just turning to you, Sir Peter and others have talked about no silver bullets. However, we do need this long-term vision and we need to be acting. How do we balance those two out?
Is that working?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Hey, there probably is a silver bullet, despite the fact that, it takes a lot of different elements to make this work. But I think the silver bullet is probably leadership, and you're being able to, whether you're in the politics or in the private sector, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a business person in corporate, is take the initiative. And I haven't done the maths accurately, but if I look at that delta, between ourselves and Denmark, the $64 billion that was invested, I would hazard a guess that our $64 billion went into selling houses to each other. We invested $64 billion in unproductive assets. Denmark invested $64 billion in productive asset. And as it turns out, my youngest son is in Copenhagen. He's got a PhD in microbiology. Hopefully he'll come back here one day, Sam. So I think leadership, taking that long-term view, and it's really encourage people in this room, to lead by example, to harness the assets that we have, and I think that will then it's the old adage, follow me, I'm right behind you. That leadership will give politicians and others confidence, tell those stories. So that to me is the opportunity that we've got a responsibility to embrace. And this forum is just a good example, another example of showing leadership.
And just picking up with you, Robin, Te Ao Māori is one of our kind of distinctive and competitive advantages, really, not just in terms of from a cultural perspective, but in terms of thinking about how we do business. And I just wondered if you'd like to make some comments about how you see Te Ao Māori actually helping with that long-term thinking and helping with New Zealand accelerating its innovation ecosystem.
This is a really tricky one. And I try and be kind and honest at the same time. So Māori companies are fighting to get their place commercially because they almost always have a non-commercial or an impact part to their companies. And it is about put your own mask on first. So a lot of companies in the Toi Hangaro report, almost all of them said they have a social part to that. And despite all of those beautiful values, which are really, really mature and have come through centuries culturally as part of who we are. So things like kotahitanga, kaitiakitanga, manaakitanga, they all come through. They tend to get applied in different ways, of course. But the companies talked about having those, I call them tangas, in their company. But for almost all of them that I interviewed, they said it was a disadvantage commercially, that it might get them through the door, even in front of international investors, but unless they had the commercial side really strong, those values would not be so important going forward. And so that was a challenge for almost all of them. The other one, and this is a challenge to mainstream New Zealanders, we are not here to educate you on your values. We want you to understand our values, we want you to put the time in, we want you to adopt them. But having a superficial way of describing those values in your companies isn't sitting so well with a lot of Māori. So here's a challenge. And I think you're right, there is an advantage to having those values which are so well defined in a country like ours. Please do adopt them, but please also put the time in. So I'd say that if it comes down to the investment side of it, does that create a better chance, I guess, of getting investors in the room with you? Sometimes, but 5 minutes in, you have to have the goods as well, and I'm talking about commercial goods, and that's where the challenges are sitting. And that's where I think the new agency, I guess, for investing, the new Callaghan, NZTE, those type agencies, could perhaps look at how they support Māori companies to do that.
And Sam, I mean, in terms of that infrastructure, what are you seeing? I mean, you know, if you could wave your magic wand, what would be the 2 or 3 things that you would change immediately to get those Kiwis back that you're talking about?
This is clearly a softball question because I've just spent the last 18 months researching the barriers to entrepreneurial migration to New Zealand, and the biggest barrier, which is a barrier to myself staying more than 3.5 years in New Zealand, is the foreign investment fund rules. I actually think it's, for those of you who know it, it's actually an elegant way to tax capital. I'm actually a big fan of the regime overall, but the way that it unintentionally taxes illiquid offshore capital actually prevents people from moving to New Zealand for the long term. In particular, Kiwi expats who've been away for less than 10 years, if they have some paper wealth in a startup, which they were either a founder of or an early employee in, often they cannot come back to New Zealand for more than 6 months. And that's exactly the wrong message. Like, that's the opposite of the message we want to be sending. We should be opening our arms, especially to those people who have a connection to the land, who are successful or have been through many failures and want to build again in New Zealand. And so, I mean, it's a no-brainer that those fixes to the foreign investment fund rules should go through, and it is promising. And just encouraging and welcoming anyone who has a connection to Aotearoa New Zealand and who has experience, whether those are successes or failures, in building and doing offshore. Come see how beautiful it is to build in this country. It's amazing. I built for 10 plus years in New York, thinking it was, you know, land of the free, home of the brave, the almighty greenback, and the barriers to building and the frictions and the bureaucracy in the US are incredible. We actually have a wonderful country to build businesses in, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. And we just need to lower those barriers, and some of those need to be government lowering those barriers. And it doesn't mean, we don't have to give up anything. It's just smart policy and some tweaks to lower those barriers and welcome people back.
Fantastic, thank you. I think one of the other things that we've been sort of talking or dodging around a little bit is, and I've heard it a little bit over the last couple of days also with fellows, is culturally in New Zealand, you know, our ability to actually, we tend to measure success, we tend to look at, you know, sports people's success versus business success slightly differently, that fear of failure. What are some things that everybody here could be doing to actually really supporting New Zealand, New Zealanders and Aotearoa New Zealand businesses to actually, break through some of those cultural barriers that we have as well. Go for it.
Just very briefly, everyone in this room should be, for your friends in your community, celebrating failure, picking those people up, analysing the whats and the whys, and then getting back to the grindstone and learning and building with those lessons. So celebrating failure, we should all be doing that for ourselves and for the people within our spheres.
Robin, or?
The answer is in development. I'm going to sort of call on a quote from Matt Otko when I was talking to him about a venture that wasn't quite performing as well as it should have. And he said, I don't want to hear any more coulda, shoulda, woulda. And that's what I would encourage folks to think about what you could do, in terms of forming a startup or investing in a startup. Just become part of the innovation ecosystem. And that's, to me, would be a very important step to, in a way, promulgating innovation, promulgating creativity, promulgating investment on a broader basis. So let's not get caught up with a coulda, shoulda, woulda. I would have invested in a New Zealand company if I could own a house here, or the fifth rules had changed. Well, don't wait for those things to change. Get in there and invest in these companies, get alongside the founders. There is a tremendous ecosystem here that to a large degree has been formed organically, sometimes despite intervention and policy. But to build it, you've got to be in it. So that's what I would encourage.
I don't know if I'm going to answer the question directly, but I'm kind of thinking, a lot of the Māori companies that I talk to, they have no exit strategy. They're here for the moko economics. They are here for 100 years, 500 years, and they have no intention of leaving. So invest in those companies because you're investing in New Zealand.
Fantastic. I think we've had an incredible taste of some of the thoughts and ideas that have been swimming this morning, but which will continue during the day. If I can just briefly summarise, I think one of the things that we work on a lot is, rather than just that success focus, also looking at that confidence focus, looking at the things we can actually act on now. And we know that building confidence is about attention and action and attitude to failure. And there's a lot of things that we can point at that prevent us from acting, but I think getting on and doing it is something actually is a New Zealand superpower, is a Kiwi superpower, and we should be really leaning into that. That long-term thinking, being the kid that doesn't take the first marshmallow, I think is probably something that we can all be thinking about, and also working together. That is something that New Zealanders are very, very good at. So I am hoping that this time next year when we're back, we'll be talking about the next iteration of what we can work on. And in the meantime, I would urge us all to remember, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy your lunch.